What is going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode. Now, in this video, it won't be a road to 1000 elo. This video, instead, what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at 3 different games of mine and 3 different losses and look to analyze as to the mistakes that I've made and fully dive in and see what I've done wrong and what I could have done differently. So basically this video will be like a learning curve for me as well, because part of the learning is to also look back on your own games, see what you've missed, and see what you could have done better to prevent the losses from happening. So without further ado, let's hop straight onto the analysis board and we will take it one game at a time. Let's do it. So this is the first game that I have played. I believe this is a one of the games that I might have not posted. I don't really remember very well, but I was starting with the white pieces. So as always, we started up with d4, pretty standard stuff. My opponent responded with d5, of course. I went with the knight, basically trying to do the standard London stuff. And this was before I bought Alex Banzea's London course. So what I was unsure of how to tackle was this early bishop move. Now, after reviewing the course, I now can see that my best move would be to move the knight to basically attack the bishop. But instead, what I have done was I have moved the my pawn to h3, which is okay. However, it does allow the knight to be captured. So that's what he's done, and unfortunately what that did was it gave me a double pawns structure, which was quite weakening for my position. So as you can see on the elo bar straight away, black has minor advantage purely because of that move. So we carried on moving. I decided to develop as always. Now my opponent decided to push his c pawn, and in this situation what I would have played would probably be around c3. I'm thinking. I'm also thinking about developing the knight. I'm also thinking about pushing this bishop to potentially here to give a check, but then again that is a one move threat, so I'm guessing it's not the best. But I do think it's the best move for me, because what that means is after I go here and I check and let's say the opponent blocks with the knight, what that allows me to do is to basically win the pawn. So that's basically what I should have done. Instead, I have pushed my c pawn, which is obviously what I would have thought, but now looking back at it and also looking at the engine, I should have developed my light squared bishop. So then he pushes on, which basically gives us advantage, because it looks like it's an inaccuracy in this move. So my engine is telling me to move to b3 and basically create like a mini chain and also threaten the pawn. But instead what I have played was I've developed my bishop looking at castling. So after that my opponent does decide to threaten my bishop, and for some reason that was a huge blunder. I believe what happened in this game was I pre-moved my castling, because you can see if you look on the time clock it literally hasn't moved, which means I have lost my bishop for nothing. And that's something that I have noticed that it's a common fault at people at my level, is we tend to pre-move things, which is dangerous, especially if my piece is able to get attacked. What I should have done was look at what he's doing, and then if he moved his bishop, either retreat all the way back or look to basically create a different threat to prohibit my opponent from taking the bishop. But unfortunately I did castle, which cost me a bishop, and that was a game where I had a spell of losses, which meant my head was all over the shop and I was playing with anger rather than with composure, and that's how mistakes tend to happen. So as you can see on the Evo bar as well, we are basically down quite significantly. Yeah, minus 3.61, so there's little to nothing we can do to basically try and win this game. But yeah, we've carried on pushing, and this was a move I wasn't sure of purely because it weakened my king side. He took with en passant, I took back. He then went for the bishop to attack the pawn. I have decided to protect the pawn. He then added another attacker to the pawn. Now, the engine is telling me to move the queen to e1. However, another alternative for me is to basically push my rook to f3 to basically defend the pawn. But instead, I haven't done neither of those things. And after he takes, I have decided to challenge his knight, forgetting that I'm about to blunder another piece with a fork. And soon after, he has delivered a checkmate. I tried to salvage it by basically throwing a check and seeing what I can do and win as much material as I could. But unfortunately, not too long after, what happened was my opponent has basically checkmated me. So this was the game that basically everything stemmed from me castling at the wrong time, and this castling move was quite significant because it lost me a bishop. And I felt, you know, before the castling, the game was you know, for me to basically win. So I could have moved back here, but instead, you know, I've pre-moved my my castling. So a massive lesson for me is to remember to not pre-move in situations that are quite dangerous. Now, as you would have seen in last episode, I've pre-moved a checkmate, but that's because none of my pieces were in danger. So that was the first game, and that was the moment that proved to be costly. So yeah, I figured, you know, this would be a very good game to start off with. But now let's move on to the second game. So this is the last loss that I will be showing you. It is a 15-minute game, and this is actually quite difficult looking back at those games, because, you know, I remember the pain and the frustration of losing those sort of games. So let's have a look. This was basically a game that I played that ended up being quite close. So let's see. We started off with the London system. Now, the main problem that I always find is whenever they put two pawns in the center, I'm guessing this is some sort of like a Queen's Gambit play. I'm not quite sure how to answer for it. Now, this, like a Queen's Gambit declined setup, is in Albert Banzea's course, so it is something that I will be studying. Right now I'm looking at the Chigorin's variation purely because that is the most common one that I find at my level. So let's have a look at what the engine is saying. It actually does say instead of c3, I should have pushed for c4, because, you know, if they take, I can take, and then it's basically pawn each. And then if they decide to take here, you know, another one I could do is do this and then just trade the queens off. But instead, I've decided to play a little bit more passive. So I was just developing. The game's fairly equal, even though I've got a slight advantage at this point. You know, I was just developing, and then I decided to hit the knight. He defended. I decided to castle. So he added another attacker to this place. I have decided to develop the knight. And then at this point where he has threatened the bishop, I have moved the bishop back to basically keep on the same diagonal. He then castled, and I feel this was the move. Basically, my idea behind a3 was to start launching these pawns and creating the attack on the queen side. But he then made a blunder which I didn't spot. So it is, like, interestingly enough, the game is asking me to sack the bishop. So let's say if I was to take, they take back, and this is some sort of Greek sacrifice, I'm guessing, because then it allows me to hit this check, and I'm seeing it now. Because of this check, the king has to move back. So let's say he moves back here, and then I'm able to win this knight and also threaten checkmate. So let's say I do this, and his best move is probably to try and move the rook to give his king another areas of room, because then if I do this, it's not checkmate because he can just go here, even though it does say that in this position I do have a mate. So if I go here, these knights are protected, and this knight is obviously taking this square, it's taking this square. So it is a very interesting position, because I'm not sure what I can do to salvage this. Because if they make some sort of a move that's not really, like, for example, one way for them to try and get rid of this is to basically sack the queen. So because if they make like any weird move, then queen h8 is essentially a checkmate, and the game is basically over, because the king can't take because of this. It can't take this. Well, let's draw arrows. Can't take this because that's defended. He can't take this because that's defended. Obviously, he can't move here, so the game is essentially over. So I did not actually see the sacrifice. Instead, I've pushed the b pawn. He added another attacker, and frustratingly enough, this sacrifice is no longer on, because if I take this here now, it's basically a blunder, because of this pawn defending the square which this knight would go to. So I pushed, he added another attacker, and in this position the engine is actually telling me to play g5, which is interesting, because isn't that a blunder? Because what if they take? Then it says best thing for me is to take. But then I'm not enjoying the fact that they can take the bishop. It says this is a blunder, but I don't really understand why. Queen h7, so if I... Okay, so I still have this diagonal on. So if I do this, that's mate, I believe, because this square is covered. Wow, okay. This makes it really frustrating, especially knowing and seeing that I had a win in this position. So what I've done instead was I pushed forward, because I've seen him attacking the knight, and I thought, well, if he takes my knight, I can take his knight with, and I didn't notice that this bishop was also staring at this knight, so I've just lost a piece. So it's, you know, he took, I took, and then there I was, you know, stuck a little bit. So frustratingly, it's still saying, you know, to me to move to g5, because it's given me an opportunity to fork. So if I was to take this pawn, I'm threatening the queen, and it's also allowing me to take back the knight. So let's just say, what if they played here? Then I'm guessing it does allow me to do this and fork the queen as well as the rook, even though in this position the engine still wants me to go queen to h5, which is so interesting because if they take, says it's a blunder, and you know, I can then do this. Oh no, it says it's a miss. So you see how I'm still not seeing the tactical side of things. So it's actually telling me to do bishop to h7 instead, because the king can't go here because of the queen, so the only room for it to go is to go here, which is essentially a forced move. And then once I do this, the king can only go here, and then h7 is mate. Wow, this is crazy, and I genuinely need to practice the mating ideas, and maybe instead of just doing mating 1 puzzles is actually to do mating 2, mating 3, because it's all well and good doing, you know, your mating 1s, but mating 2s and mating 3s perhaps will allow me to look at more patterns. So yeah, let's go back to this game, and I'm going to show you quickly what I've done wrong. So obviously he's taken, I then moved my bishop, he attacked my knight, so I've decided to move it. He gave me a check, I moved back, which allowed me to actually do this fork, which says it's a miss still. And at this point in time, I know I had 2 choices, and I remember when I was playing this game, I was thinking between either forking him or taking the piece back. Now the computer is saying I should have just taken the piece back, and because this fork is still on until he moves either of those pieces. So let's say if he was to, I don't know, make some sort of move different one. So if he went here, what I could have done was just drop my queen back, or I could have pushed it up. And I was thinking of pushing it up, and then, for example, his queen can't go here, and go here, but again this diagonal is now blocked as well. So it's frustrating because now I'm looking at it, and yes, it's a lot easier with the engine for sure, but I remember thinking to myself in this position, like, I still had a winning move, which was to take the knight, and I opted to go for the fork. So then I've basically taken this, and you know, the knight is still hanging, and the engine is still screaming at me, you know, take it. But you know, as the game progressed, I took the pawns, and I didn't realize, and I didn't see this diagonal, which was cutting off my king. So I took it, and in the next move I have lost by checkmate. So this was another game that was for me to win. Basically, you can see that I had ideas to win. I've let it slip, so I'm definitely going to be doing more puzzles, and I'm going to be looking for the mating 2, mating 3s, different tactics, and also doing puzzles that are related to the opening as well. So I will be doing more London system Caro-Kann puzzles, because the middle games are also something that I struggle with, especially when it comes to tactical and positional chess. So I think this was a really good episode for you guys to also see the mistakes that I'm making. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you want to see any other sort of content that isn't just Road to 1000 Elo. So if you enjoyed this video, please, I would love for you to consider subscribing, as I am you know, on a mission to grow this channel. I would love to grow the community as much as I possibly can. So yeah, please make sure you subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next episode for another episode of Road to 1000 Elo. Take care.